Good day to you on this first Friday in June. My name is Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrews in Newlands, Cape Town. I'm looking for a name for this series. I've called my Wednesday chats Wednesdays with Mark, but somehow Fridays with Mark sounds a little boring. So if you have some creative thoughts, which I'm struggling to have, please share them with me. Today I would like to reflect on Psalm 121. It's a lovely psalm that begins with those words, "I lift up my eyes to the hills, but where shall I find help?" Interestingly, it's a psalm that's found its way into our Anglican prayer book to the service for the anointing of the sick. And obviously people who are needing help with their health and seeking God's help in that area, a psalm that asks that question is clearly relevant to this time of ministry. It's also a psalm that's known as the Traveller's Psalm, and it's part of a section in the Psalms of what's known as the Psalms of Ascent, psalms that were probably used as people journeyed up to the temple in Jerusalem for important festivals. In terms of needing God's help, I think in today's world of coronavirus and the pandemic that we're all struggling with, we're perhaps a little bit more aware of our need for help. If, like me, you come from a relatively privileged and resourced background, a lot of the time there's very little that we can't actually provide for ourselves. There are times where we may not quite have the resources we'd like for what we want, but generally speaking, everything that we need is within our grasp. It's times like this pandemic that suddenly awakens us to the fact that we do not have complete control over our lives, that there is an aspect to it where we are just unable to provide for what we need. Many of us, perhaps for the first time in our lives, have found ourselves constricted for a substantial period of time. My only previous experience of this perhaps was doing basics when I did national service back in the 80s and wasn't allowed out of camp. But at least there was contact with people. One could phone friends and family. One could write letters. One didn't feel that one was completely enclosed, although one's normal freedoms were constricted within that context. But lockdown has changed a lot of things. It's difficult to meet with people because of the dangers of passing on the virus. It's we've been in it for a while, and it's certainly for myself, I'm beginning to find it quite wearing on that level. But also realizing that actually this is, on one level, a new normal, and we need to get on with it and put things in place that will actually really hold our lives going forward into the future. A journey with coronavirus beyond lockdown. And I have a sense that this psalm speaks particularly into that context. It begins with those words, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Every time I open my bedroom curtains or walk past a window in my house, I see this wonderful view of Table Mountain out front. It's a real blessing. And so I often raise my eyes to the hill or to the mountain. And I'm thankful to God for the gift of both living in Newlands and having this wonderful view on a daily basis. But as I lift my eyes, there are times when I really am, and through coronavirus have become more aware of needing God's help, just needing to acknowledge God walking beside me and with me and being here to carry me, those whom I love, my family, my friends, the community that I serve here. And there are times where it is quite difficult to trust. And it's a psalm like Psalm 121 that just is a wonderfully powerful reminder that God is our help. The second verse says, "My help comes from the Lord who has made heaven and earth." And that's a profound thought, that actually the Creator, the one who has put all this together, is the one who is interested in helping me. And for me to have the courage to draw on that strength is important. I wonder what your needs are at the moment. I wonder when you last looked out the window and what you see when you look out the window. Perhaps you don't have a mountain or a hill to look at, but I'm sure in your mind's eye you can imagine driving through the countryside. And there is something wonderful about doing that. because so often we become aware of just how broad and big and wide our world is. As one looks up into the night sky and sees all those stars and knows something of cosmology and the science of our universe. Absolutely amazing what is out there. For me, science is just a wonderful gift, biology and things that help us understand how our world has been put together and the intricacies of that. And to hold all of that within our understanding of God as creator is important. Science helps us understand how God has created, how God continues to create and sustain the environment in which we live our daily lives. And to trust that the resources for ongoing life and life that is abundant, that those resources are there, and how we can utilize them ourselves, but perhaps even more importantly, how we can use the resources we have and share those resources with others. And so what will our journey ahead look like? What are the resources that we can give away that are abundant in our lives? Perhaps there are others that seem less abundant, but if we actually began to share them, we would appreciate how much we truly do have. And I think we're living into a world, or journeying into a world, where a need for empathy, a need for care, a need of awareness of our neighbor and our neighbor's need needs to be so much more prominent than it may have been. And as we walk this journey, to know that God is our keeper, not in the sense of a zookeeper, but God, a keeper who really looks out for our best interests and desires to have us explore and experience life within the abundance that he's created it. Part of Jesus' ministry, I think, was just to awaken us to the nature of the gift that life is, and to journey meaningfully and hopefully profoundly with that journey. And so a sense that God is our keeper and that he will be that protector. So often I would prefer him to be the magician who would come and just destroy the virus and destroy the limitations to my life and the hardships, that I could kind of walk on air continuously. That's not the kind of help or the kind of keeping that God does for us. God has placed us in this world, given us our lives, and given us accountability for how we live that, and a freedom to live our lives. And so we hold to this psalm particularly as we just remind ourselves that God has resourced us, that God is present, that God will keep us. And my question to myself, as much as possibly to you, is how are we doing on this journey? How are we doing in terms of trusting God? And how are we utilizing the resources of life that God has given to each one of us?